So, if there was any team that had a very intriguing offseason heading into the 2024 NFL Draft, it was definitely the Detroit Lions. Of course, coming off of their second-best record ever in the 2023 regular season, 12-5, and then blowing a 17-point second-half lead to the San Francisco 49ers, one win from their first Super Bowl bid, there were a lot of questions that needed to be answered. Yes, they did see some positives, but some of their negatives, on the other hand, only further upped our anticipation of what they were actually going to do on draft night. Well, after seeing the moves they made in the first round, I'm pretty convinced that we've still got some time before this Lions put on a show for our city, and I honestly could not be more excited. With a record-breaking 700,000 people in attendance during NFL Draft Week in Detroit, it has made the anticipation grow even more. As if that wasn't enough, the Lions selected a promising new talent in Terrion Arnold, the cornerback who is ready to showcase his versatility and athleticism. He will bring a dynamic presence to the team's defense and is destined to make a meaningful impact. While most of this will look nothing short of phenomenal, at least on paper, when you actually get into what we might see on the field because of this, it might not necessarily be what some of you were expecting. And with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes at the helm until 2027, the Detroit Lions are poised for greatness following their remarkable journey to the NFC Championship last year. I know it might sound like a bit of an over-exaggeration, but honestly, it's just not when I say the Lions came out of this draft in the best situation they possibly could have imagined. Not only did they leave the draft with the highest value duo of prospects in a lot of people's minds, and that's outside of what Houston pulled off, but in terms of the acquisitions in Terrion Arnold and Carlton Davis, the craziest part is that they directly address some of the biggest holes that were remaining within this team. With some of their biggest offseason departures being guys like Tracy Walker, along with cornerback Cam Sutton, the fact that they were not only able to get guys that fit schematically what they are trying to retain from their defensive presence last year, but also getting the highest value possible in the process, that's just insane. Just the film on these guys in itself would be more than enough to solidify that point. While there's definitely still a ton more to discuss with these guys in terms of what they could bring to the table in 2024, they're not even the newest defensive acquisitions for Detroit that I'm personally most intrigued to see. No, I'm not referring to Carlton Davis, who they also hilariously took from Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Instead, I'm talking about Terrion Arnold. Also, whenever you're talking about adding an extremely versatile and highly skilled wide receiver like Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that having a receiver putting up numbers like these through his NFL career thus far would be insanely valuable for literally any NFL team. I know that's one hell of a hot take on my part, but there's definitely people wondering why a team like the Lions would do this. Sure, with the departure of DJ Chark earlier in 2023, it definitely created a need at the position for this team. However, after very quickly reacting to this and acquiring their new primary traditional receiver in St. Brown, along with retaining Jameson Williams and Marvin Jones Jr. to support him, some people might think Amon-Ra might create too much, or should I say unnecessary, depth in the receiving core. Trust me, especially within this Detroit offense, I think that Dan Campbell and Jared Goff would find a way to utilize 10 different receivers into this scheme if there was a way. With this team and the dominant run that we saw from them throughout the majority of last season, you could strongly argue that their ability to utilize multiple receivers and adjust their use accordingly, depending on what opposing defenses would throw at them, was ultimately one of the biggest reasons as to why they had a top 5 offense in all of football. Whether you're talking about what he can do in the air or even what he can add to this team on the ground, Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to do nothing but add emphatically to the team's overall game. I say this because let's just go ahead and take into consideration the different situations that we've seen Amon-Ra St. Brown in over the course of his career thus far. While he's always been used in sort of the same sense, that being a reliable receiver who can thrive in both short and deep routes while also being heavily targeted and used in crucial third down situations. In terms of how he was actually being used within the Detroit Lions offense, it almost seemed like it was getting too predictable. Unlike him being the undisputed primary receiver at the beginning of his career in an offense, he switched into a receiving core by committee situation very similar to the Detroit Lions in 2023. Yes, while it was a big note that he was receiving significantly fewer targets last season, his efficiency, on the other hand, when he was used, was arguably one of the best out of all receivers in the league. And go figure, because the situation that he was absolutely thriving in last season is almost exactly what he's getting thrown into this season. In my opinion, St. Brown and Williams combined, when healthy, arguably outweigh all the strengths that DJ Chark brought to the table for this team's operation. Now, don't get me wrong, DJ Chark's speed and quickness are tough to beat almost across the entire league. However, in terms of, say, a power receiver to be used in necessary short yardage situations, Detroit hasn't had a guy like Marvin Jones Jr. in quite some time. Then, back to St. Brown, who you could say his speed and vision are right in line with DJ Chark in terms of what they could actually do on the field. He's also easily the runaway best route running presence in the receiving core, which I know is something that Detroit doesn't tend to incorporate into their scheming a lot, but I mean, with a versatile receiving core like this to work with, the possibilities, especially with an only improving defensive line right alongside this, really seem endless for Dan Campbell and Jared Goff. But anyway, to get back to the draft, and more specifically, I guess the defensive side of the ball for this team heading into the new season. Considering everything we saw from this team in 2023, it feels extremely weird to say that despite displaying a solid overall defense last season, it wasn't necessarily the idea that they needed to improve overall, just in specific areas. While the biggest area would probably be the secondary, lucky for Detroit fans, because when you're talking about Terrion Arnold and Carlton Davis, they check a lot of the boxes that you typically look for in this regard. Terrion Arnold, being one of the best overall prospects in the entire draft class, is probably the best cornerback in terms of press coverage and limiting top wideouts. With Carlton Davis potentially offering a veteran presence, he thrived more in man coverage situations than anything else in his career, consistently locking down the outside. And honestly, what might be most crucial in all of this is just the simple fact of surrounding these guys with the versatile skill sets and veteran presence of Detroit's defense already. You'd think it would pay dividends on their development in due time. Of course, this, along with everything else that we've discussed here in this video, we'll just have to wait and see. Nonetheless, though, I am extremely curious to hear what you all have to think from all angles of the entire Detroit Lions situation. So please be sure to let me know in the comments. What are your thoughts on the entire Lions 2024 draft class as a whole, and how well do you think Terrion Arnold is going to fit into this defense? But also, I just wanted to say thank you so much to each and every one of you out there for watching. I appreciate you all more than anything. You all know this, and I will see you guys in the next video.